So I'm here to talk to you about mental health. Mental health is always really fun to talk about. It's a lot like when I get on a plane ride. People always ask me what I do. I say I'm a psychologist. I get one of two responses. They talk to me the entire flight about a dear family member or a really, really close friend and all their symptoms, or they don't talk to me at all. So it's one of the two. That's what I'm going to get. And so when I'm talking about mental health, I kind of get the same responses from audiences, typically like, I don't know how interested I am in this. But mental health in Utah is kind of a very fascinating thing. If you look at statistics on the state of Utah, we're kind of very interesting. We're big on our physical health. We're actually number 5, even though I just read a study, Utah's number 1 on sugar consumption. We have our personal drugs, that is true. We're really big on physical health, but mental health, we're actually number 1 on rates of mental illness. We just beat out Oklahoma. And if you look at that map down there, there's actually a belt. It starts up in Washington, goes down through New Mexico. There's high rates of mental illness through those states that are red right there. And there's specific reasons. I'm not going to get into the research on why it is, but Utah is number 1 on mental illness. And what's fascinating about that is when we look at our physical health, the reason I bring this up, we're very willing to get help. If somebody has diabetes, we're very willing to use insulin. We don't think that's a bad thing unless you watch Studio C. But when it comes to our mental health, we actually have a tendency to not see this near as legitimate. I just had a missionary I'm working with right now. He had to come home early off his mission. His parents have told him, make sure you tell everybody you came home for physical health reasons, not mental health. And that's very, very common. I could go into numerous examples around mental health. Now, the reason why that's important, I'm going to jump through this since I don't have as much time, is there's many common things that happen on this campus when we look at statistics. When you look at statistics, almost 61.5 million Americans experience mental illness. So that's anybody 18 and older. Okay, but what's fascinating is fewer than 1 in 9 seek treatment. And so that plays out very, very strong with us. 16 million adults had at least one major depressive disorder. If you want to make it more interesting for BYU, if you've looked at the book College of the Overwhelmed, a great book that looks at mental health statistics on college campuses across the country, 1 in 2 chance. When you're looking at your class, 1 in 2 students will experience a major depressive disorder during their 4 to 5 years, since we're at BYU, at college, okay? And our statistics at BYU are a little higher, actually, when it comes to depression. You have more than a 50%. It's not greatly higher, but 50% of students will have major depression. In the last year at BYU, even though our count was down to 27,000 students, we saw over 32,000 appointments in the counseling center. 1999, that was down to about 17,000 was how many students we saw. Every year it's getting bigger for us. We have the 2nd largest counseling center in the country. And so this is a very significant thing at BYU because of how high the rates are, and there's specific reasons before that. Antidepressants, number 1 drug used in America, and Utah always taking number 1. We are the number 1 state for using antidepressants when you look at prescriptions on that. About 30% of adults will experience anxiety. The reason why that's so important here is anxiety is the number 1 reason why people come into the counseling center. We have very, very high rates of anxiety on this campus, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Often co-occurring with depression or substance use. And suicide's a very interesting thing here as well. When you look at suicide, someone in America died from suicide every 12.8 minutes. It's the 2nd leading cause of death worldwide when you look at young adults. And more than 90% of people who have died from suicide had some type of mental disorder, typically depression with it. The reason that's so important in Utah, we're number 9, statistically speaking. I was talking to one of my colleagues. BYU, it had been years since we'd had somebody commit suicide, they called a successful suicide, where they actually died. In the last year, we've had 2 suicides. Okay, I'm a liaison to YView Housing. We had a student who just committed suicide in March, and I was out there talking to numerous students and working through that. And it was fascinating because I was out there the night the suicide occurred, and I was talking to many students, and at least 6 students came up to me and said, last night I was contemplating ending my life. And this was kind of a wake-up call for me, and we got them into therapy and started working. But it's very, very common to have suicidal thoughts and feel like you're the only one. Okay? So the common things, yes? It very much is. Yes. No, nor do we want you to do that.
Not only that, we don't want them to go out and have not had any kind of us recognizing that this is pretty serious with them and we should be.
No, I love your question. So to fill that very quickly, we're starting a new program with Hope for Utah. And because I don't know if you know, we've seen a dramatic increase in the suicides in high schools across Utah. Lone Peak has a very high suicidal rate. Hope for Utah, we're joining with them. There's a couple things we're going to be doing. Every area has a liaison. This fall, we're going to be handing out magnets that has a walkthrough exactly how to get you connected to us as the counseling center. And I'll talk more and hear the kind of resources that we have as well. Just because of time, I'm going to move forward. But if you have questions, please feel free to come up and talk to me after. I'm very, very happy to answer them. The common things that people come into our counseling center for, anxiety, like I said, is number one. Depression is probably number two. Stress, perfectionism is a huge thing at BYU. And perfectionism is highly linked to anxiety as well as depression in all the research. I'm actually just publishing an article on perfectionism because I have a really good subjects to study here at BYU. I've already got over 1,000. I've responded to my perfectionism questionnaire. OCD is an interesting thing. You see much higher rates. I've worked at Indiana State University as well as the University of Missouri, and I can absolutely say OCD is much higher at BYU than anywhere else I've ever worked at, particularly around sexual thoughts. It's called scrupulosity in mental health. We have so many students coming in with this, and it is really getting in the way of their functioning overall. So it's another thing. Eating disorders, because that perfectionism has to be on both the inside as well as the outside. See a lot of eating disorders. And relationship issues. We do a lot of, I'm a couples therapist. MFT is my master's, marriage and family therapy. So we get to see a lot of couples therapy and issues around that. Stressed, remember it's just desserts spelled backwards. One of the things we have is a stress management center. It's called the Biofeedback Center. It's a great place to send your students. Right now you can get them in very quickly during the spring and summer. It's a little trickier in the fall and winter. It's sometimes 1 to 2 weeks out, particularly after midterms. We get a run on the Stress Management Center. It's a great place because we hook you up to machines. There's no pain involved in hooking you up to those machines, but they get to have a lot of fun. Most of the stuff we have in there now are games, which they love. It totally fits the video game environment. There's one where you like drive a car. The more relaxed you are, the faster your car drives and you win this race, which is really needed in Utah if you've driven here. There's another one which is kind of like, I call it the Jedi mind one. You get to stack these rocks the more you're relaxed. And the students really respond with those. But we have specific classes where we'll get them, if they're really having a hard time with the testing center, specific classes, we'll teach them how to calm themselves down. And then we have them start reading one of their textbooks. You'll see it'll go up, their stress, and then we'll teach them the techniques so they can stay, because stress gets in the way of encoding information. It's a great resource for you. It's totally free for them. The other thing that's great about them is that caps.byu.edu website. There's free relaxation recordings. Any MP3 device or iPod player, you can download all this for free, try out what works for you, and have some fun with it. I always warn my students, some of it you'll find cheese-tastic, and some of it will be awesome to you. It depends on how you relax. Most BYU students, because we're go-getters, I would never say just go home, stay in bed for 3 days and watch Netflix. That would stress them out more than relax them. And people don't get that with relaxation. You've got to find the techniques that work for you. Okay, if you're feeling more than stressed, know that we have therapy. That's the key thing we do. A lot of people think I help people like schedule their courses and figure out how they're going to graduate, and that's my job. I'm a psychologist, so we help people with mental health issues. We provide individual, couples therapy, as well as group therapy. And we have probably the largest groups program across the country. And so that's what we're here for. It's free services, which is huge if you understood how much therapy costs. It's a huge service to them as long as they're a full-time or a 3-4 student. And it's PhD level psychologists. We got 30 PhD. I was at University of Missouri that had 30,000 students. We had 10 PhDs in there. When you include the trainees we have over 50 people to see the students here at this university, as well as 2 psychiatrists, which is a huge deal. The church invests a lot of money for mental health, and we want to make sure the students know what they have here. The other thing is if somebody's in crisis, somebody brought this up. If you find a student, you're sitting down, I've got numerous calls, particularly right before finals, where students just totally breaking down, and they're in crisis, they're highly suicidal. Know that we have 2 resources for you that are very, very helpful. One, they can walk into the counseling center. I just saw somebody walk in Tuesday, and I saw them for a while. They can walk in, talk to a therapist within 10 to 15 minutes. We have walk-in hours. Now make sure it's a crisis. To make sure we can see as many crises, that means they're suicidal, they're an eating disorders at the area where it's affecting their health, like Student Health Center will often have somebody walked over to us. It's not you just broke up with somebody and it's difficult. We still want to talk to you about that, but that's not a crisis, but many students see it as a crisis. But we're trying to make sure we're able to see as many crises as we can in those times. So we have walk-in hours, and then after 4 p.m., so because most crises aren't planned, they typically happen at like 1 a.m. That's my favorite time. 1 and 2 a.m. is when I get the call when I'm on call, is when most people are highly suicidal. We have an on-call counselor service for you. The easiest way to remember it is 8014. Just keep dialing 2 after that. It's 222222. That'll connect you to the BYU Dispatch Police Office. And all you need to say is, I need to talk to a counselor, the on-call counselor, in some way mental health related. They'll know what you're talking about. They immediately connect you with the on-call counselor. I've done it many times, and they'll connect you with that and get that student. We'll get them in the hospital if we need to, or get them an appointment the next day in the morning. But we will do what we need to do to keep them safe, and we're very, very invested in that. The other thing, I'm going to skip through this just because of time. To make an appointment, go to caps.byu.edu, okay? When you see that, just there, this is a shot from our screen. Make an appointment. All they need to do is fill out some paperwork, and I'll direct them straight to the phone number that they need to do to make a call to us to set that up. It's a very simple process. We try to make it as minimally painful as we can and make it as discreet as we can. We're down in the basement in 1500 in the Wilkinson Center, so they can come in and not be seen by everybody. We're kind of hidden for that reason, but centrally located where they can find us. And so we do that on purpose, but all they need to do is go in and call that number, and we can set them up with a first-time appointment very, very quickly. The other thing that we've developed, this just came out this year, and this is for many students as well as professors. If you go to help.byu.edu, this is a great resource for students as well as professors. I'm a liaison to a stake as well, so I work with a lot of bishops and stake presidents, and we direct them there. It's got information on how to talk to somebody who's experiencing depression, how to talk to somebody who's dealing with anxiety. It's a lot of self-help material and kind of how you deal with that. And so we definitely want you to have that as well. It's a free service as well, but any type of common concerns you typically see here at BYU, that's what we want you kind of looking at. Okay, just because of time, I'll just answer one of the questions that was posed to me, and then I will definitely open it up if you want to come up and ask me afterwards. I'm very, very happy to answer those. The key question that I was asked quite heavily is, what do I do with students if there's a stigma, kind of like to get over that stigma that's associated with mental health? Because many of them, I think, need to come over to the counseling center, but kind of like what I was saying at the beginning of the presentation, they often don't. The key thing I would say to you is I give you some advice in different ways. Students I found, so I'm a liaison to housing here, so I have to talk to a lot of freshman students that we try to catch them as quickly as we can to get them over to the counseling center. What I've learned really works is I say, you seemed really stressed. They respond to stress a lot. If I say, you seem depressed, it becomes a label, a judgment, and they're like, I don't need therapy. It's almost like I'm going to prove to you I don't need therapy kind of a moment. And so what I usually typically lead with is stressed or perfectionism. they tend to often respond to that. And BYU students, it's common. I mean, a student once told me, it was like, I feel like when I sat down in my first class, they talked to you about the ACT scores of everybody coming in and the GPAs, and I sit down, and this person over here was valedictorian. This person was like all-state athlete. The person in front of me plays 4 instruments, and the person behind me speaks 3 languages, and I'm thinking, you know, I watched The Simpsons last night. I found it really funny. What is wrong with me? How did I get into this university? And because of that, they're in this space where they're very much looking at what's going on. Why am I so different? But the problem is so many are suffering in silence because they don't talk to each other. I feel like BYU in many ways, and I don't mean this in any negative way, is a lot like fast and testimony meeting. And what I mean by that is so many get up and talk about their highlights. It's like this best of moment of, I'm married to the most wonderful person, my kids are all honor roll students, and God helped me get an A on a test this week that I hardly studied for. And rarely do we get up there and talk about what's really going on and get more authentic. And what we're trying to do over in the counseling center is authenticity brings about healing. Inauthenticity can't get you there. And what I hear on this campus so much from the students is fake it till you make it. And that faking it till you make it is killing them. And what's so cool when they get over to the counseling center is they start to relate to one another and realize, holy cow. I mean, I do group therapy, and this guy was stressed out of his mind. You saw the sweat on the forehead, and he just went, my therapist told me I need to talk about this. I just need to tell you people, I have a pornography problem. And he was sure he was the only one. 4 other guys in the group like, hey, me too. 2 girls in the group, hey, me too. And he's like, what? And he's in that space. But in that moment, there's that, I'm not alone in this. And that's what we're trying to do. Starting with stress or perfectionism tends to resonate with them, and they tend to come over. Know that when they get over there, us as a psychologist, we're going to do an assessment, and we realize there's stuff behind the stress. We realize there's stuff behind the perfectionism. We'll get to those deeper things, but that often gets them in our door. Another great talk that I would highly recommend is Elder Holland's talk. He talked about depression just a little while ago. I have quotes in my PowerPoint, but I won't go to those. But he talked about his own struggles, as well as prophets of the church who struggled with depression. This is not something that few people or only unrighteous people struggle with. And we need to get away from that thought that BYU students take that wickedness never was happiness to, if I'm not happy 24/7, I'm being wicked in some way. That faking it till you make it needs to stop. It's really, really hurting. And at the counseling center, we can really help them look at it differently. Thank you for your time. Forgive me for going over a little bit, but I just really am passionate about what we do. Thank you very much.